There comes a moment in every relationship where your energy, your presence, your effort has been poured out so much that it begins to feel one-sided. You give, you show up, you invest, and somewhere along the way the balance shifts. But here's the truth. When you stop overgiving, when you stop chasing, when you pull back with intention, everything changes. Suddenly, the person who was comfortable, maybe even complacent, begins to wake up. He starts to notice what's slipping through his fingers. He begins to feel the weight of your absence, and that's when the chase begins. Why? Because human nature craves what it feels it could lose. We value most what we think is slipping away. When you pull back, not out of anger, not out of manipulation, but out of self-respect, you ignite a primal force, you create a shift, you communicate a message that no words could ever deliver. I know my worth. I don't have to prove it. I choose where to place my energy. And that is when the dynamic flips. The most powerful part isn't even about him, it's about you. When you pull back, you reconnect with your strength. You realize you don't need to chase anyone to be valued. Your worth is already complete, and in that power, you set the standard for how you will be treated. When you pull back, the very first thing that happens is awareness. Think about it. When someone is constantly around, constantly giving, constantly showing up, their presence blends into the everyday rhythm of life. It becomes so natural, so expected, that it fades into the background. But the moment you remove that presence, the silence is deafening. The absence isn't just felt, it's noticed on every level. Suddenly, the person who was used to you being there without fail begins to realize that something has shifted, and that shift creates awareness in the deepest way. Awareness is powerful because it disrupts patterns. Most relationships fall into patterns where one person gives more and the other receives more. It becomes so routine that the one receiving often doesn't even think about it. They assume the calls will keep coming, the messages will keep arriving, the energy will always be there. But when you pull back, that pattern is broken. And when a pattern is broken, the human mind wakes up. It begins to search for what's missing, and in that search, it realizes just how much was being taken for granted. This awareness doesn't come from your words. It comes from your actions, or rather, the lack of them. You could say 1,000 times, I feel unappreciated, or I give too much, but those words can be brushed aside, debated, or minimized. When you pull back, there is no debate. The reality is clear. Your energy is no longer in the same place, and that creates a wake-up call. It forces the other person to reflect, not because you demanded it, but because they feel it in a way that can't be ignored. In that moment of awareness, emotions begin to surface. He may feel uneasy, even anxious. He may find himself wondering where you've gone emotionally, why you're not showing up like before, why the flow of attention and energy has slowed. That uneasiness is the mind waking up to a truth it overlooked, that you were never obligated to give endlessly, that your effort was a gift. By pulling back, you remind him that presence is earned, not guaranteed, and it's in that reminder that he starts to truly value what he had. Awareness also sparks curiosity. He begins to think about you more, to notice the absence of your voice, your laughter, your energy. He might replay moments, question decisions, and even wonder what you're doing with your time now that you're no longer investing so heavily in him. That curiosity is powerful because it naturally draws his focus back to you, not through force, but through the simple truth that people crave what they no longer easily have. The deeper awareness becomes, the more it creates urgency. The mind doesn't like gaps. It doesn't like missing pieces. When you pull back, that gap creates tension, and tension demands resolution. The only way to resolve it is for him to step forward, to re-engage, to chase. And it all begins with that first spark of awareness that your pullback creates. When you leave a little space and step back, something fascinating happens. Your value becomes magnified. It's not that your worth wasn't there all along, it always was. The difference is, when you are constantly present, constantly available, it becomes easy for the other person to overlook the depth of what you bring. Human nature is wired this way. We tend to take for granted what is consistent, what is secure, what is always there. But when it's gone, even for a little while, the contrast becomes undeniable. That's when the full weight of your value comes rushing into focus. Think about it. The laughter you used to share, the encouragement you always gave, the way you brought energy into the room. Those things can feel almost invisible when they're steady and reliable. He assumes they'll be there tomorrow, next week, and the week after. But the moment you pull back, the absence of those things starts to echo. He notices the silence where there used to be conversation, the stillness where there used to be comfort, the emptiness where there used to be warmth. And in that gap, the truth shines brighter than it ever did when you were pouring yourself out daily. You were the one adding immeasurable value. This is why absence can be such a teacher. It teaches through experience, not through words. A person may not fully appreciate what they have until it's gone or even slightly out of reach. Your distance becomes the mirror that reflects your importance. He begins to realize how much lighter his life felt because of your support, how much more meaningful his days were because of your presence. It's not manipulation. It's simply the reality of value being recognized in its absence. That recognition triggers a deeper emotional shift. Suddenly, he starts replaying moments in his mind. He remembers your smile, your kindness, your effort. He remembers the way you listened when no one else did, the way you showed up when it mattered most, the way you gave pieces of yourself without ever demanding in return. Those memories hit differently when you're no longer right there, constantly supplying that energy. They grow sharper, more vivid, because now they are attached to longing. And here's the powerful part. When you pull back, it forces him to acknowledge that your value was never conditional on him. You were not pouring into him because you had to. You were doing it because you chose to. That choice made you a gift, not a guarantee, and once that truth hits, once he realizes your presence was something precious, the desire to hold onto it intensifies. He no longer sees your effort as something casual or expected. He sees it for what it always was, an offering of love, care, and energy that cannot be easily replaced. So when your presence becomes scarce, your value rises like never before. And it's in that rise that he begins to feel the loss, to see what he overlooked, and to recognize that the light you brought into his world isn't something he can afford to ignore. When you pull back, something else begins to take root: desire. Not the surface-level kind of desire that comes from novelty or convenience, but a deeper longing that is born when something meaningful is suddenly harder to access. Human psychology is wired for this. We are drawn to what we can't easily have, and we are compelled to chase what feels like it's slipping away. The moment you step back, you create that subtle tension, that invisible pull that makes him lean forward. Desire grows in the space between what is familiar and what is missing. When you are constantly available, there is no gap, no space, no hunger created. Everything feels certain, and certainty, while comforting, often lacks the spark that keeps people attentive. But when you create just enough distance, that certainty turns into uncertainty, and it's in that uncertainty where desire begins to burn. He doesn't know what you're thinking, what you're doing, or where your heart is in that moment. That unknown plants seeds of curiosity, and curiosity quickly transforms into craving. This desire is not simply about missing your presence. It's about realizing how much life felt fuller with you in it. He remembers the excitement of hearing from you, the comfort of knowing you cared, the stability of your energy. Without it, the everyday rhythm starts to feel offbeat, incomplete. That incompleteness is what drives him to want more, to close the distance you've created, to move toward you again. Desire always flows toward what adds meaning, and your absence highlights just how much meaning you brought. The fascinating thing about desire is that it grows stronger the less it's satisfied. When you step back, you stop feeding the constant stream of attention and energy. That scarcity makes every small interaction with you more powerful. A simple word, a brief moment, or even your presence in a room suddenly feels magnified. Why? Because now it's not guaranteed. Now it carries weight. Now it matters, and when something matters, people chase it with greater intensity. Desire also creates action. It pushes him out of his comfort zone. He may start to reach out more, initiate conversations, or even put effort into reconnecting in ways he never bothered with before. That's because the pull of desire is not passive, it demands movement, and the movement is always toward closing the gap, toward reclaiming what feels lost. This isn't about games or tricks. It's about the natural human drive to pursue what feels significant and meaningful. When you pull back, you're not pushing him away. You're inviting him to step forward. You're giving him the space to feel, to want, to chase. And in that chase, he rediscovers what was always true, that your presence was never ordinary, that it was always something to be desired, something worth pursuing, something that cannot be taken for granted. When you decide to pull back, what really happens is you create space for reflection. Space is powerful. It forces people to look inward, to notice what they hadn't noticed before, to question what they might have been ignoring. In the noise of constant interaction, it's easy for someone to coast, to go on autopilot, to let your presence become part of the background of their life. But when that rhythm is interrupted, when you take a step back, the silence you create makes everything louder in his mind. He can no longer escape the awareness of what you brought into his world. Reflection is a gift disguised as distance. It allows him to feel the contrast between life with you fully present and life with you less available. That contrast sparks clarity. He begins to ask himself, why does it feel different now? What was I not paying attention to before? What did I take for granted? Those questions don't arise when you're always there filling in the gaps. They only surface when you stop filling them. By pulling back, you hand him the opportunity to see what he refused to see when it was right in front of him, and this reflection isn't just about the good moments. It's about the entire dynamic. He begins to remember the way you supported him, the sacrifices you made, the patience you showed. But he also has to face where he might have failed to reciprocate, where he didn't meet you halfway, where he assumed your love, energy, and presence were endless resources. Reflection is uncomfortable because it forces accountability. Your absence becomes the mirror that reveals not just your value but his shortcomings. What makes this process so transformative is that it's not fueled by your words but by his own mind. People can argue with what you say, they can dismiss your explanations, but they cannot escape their own thoughts. When he sits in that quiet, when the space you created starts to feel heavy, the realization comes from within him, and that makes it far more powerful. It's no longer you pointing out your worth, it's him seeing it, feeling it, and acknowledging it for himself. That's why pulling back is so powerful. It shifts the dynamic from you proving your value to him recognizing it. The reflection creates ownership. Instead of blaming you or assuming everything is fine, he has to sit with the reality of what he's missing, and that reflection can spark a decision. Does he want to step up? Does he want to change? Does he want to stop coasting and actually invest in what matters? By pulling back, you're not punishing him. You're giving him the gift of perspective. You're allowing him to see with new eyes, to feel with a deeper heart, and to wake up to the truth he may have been blind to all along, that your presence was a privilege, not a guarantee. When you pull back, something shifts in the balance of energy. You reclaim your power. For too long, you may have been the one giving, showing up, holding everything together, pouring your time, attention, and emotion into someone who came to expect it without realizing the weight you carried. Constant giving can quietly drain you, and worse, it can create an illusion for the other person that your energy is infinite, that it will always be there no matter how little effort they give in return. But the moment you step back, you break that illusion, you remind yourself and him that your energy is a choice, not an obligation. Reclaiming your power isn't about anger or bitterness, it's about shifting the focus back to yourself. Instead of asking, why isn't he noticing me? Why isn't he valuing what I give? You begin to ask, am I valuing myself? Am I honoring my own boundaries? Am I making sure that my energy is going where it's appreciated, not just expected? These are the kinds of questions that bring you back into alignment with your strength. When you answer them honestly, you start to recognize the difference between someone who truly treasures you and someone who only consumes what you offer. This shift doesn't just affect you, it affects him too, because the moment you take your energy back, he feels the change. The attention he once received without effort isn't there anymore. The constant reassurance he quietly relied on no longer flows so easily. That absence forces him to look at his own role, his own effort, and his own responsibility in the relationship. It shines a light on what he has or hasn't been giving, and in that recognition the dynamic changes. No longer are you the one chasing, proving, or overextending. He begins to feel the need to step forward, to give, to contribute, to chase. Reclaiming your power is about more than relationships. It's a life principle. When you stop overextending yourself, you create room to invest in your own growth, your passions, your dreams. You start to radiate a different kind of energy, an energy that comes from confidence, self-respect, and focus. That energy is magnetic. It draws people in, not because you're trying to convince them of your worth, but because you're living in it. And when he sees that, when he notices that glow returning to you, it becomes undeniable. Your power, your presence, your independence, it commands attention without you ever needing to demand it. So when you pull back, it's not about playing games. It's about reclaiming control of your emotional resources. It's about drawing a line and saying, I will no longer give endlessly without being valued in return. That's strength, that's dignity, that's power, and in that moment you shift the story. You're no longer waiting for him to validate you. You've already validated yourself, and that self-empowerment is what makes him realize he must rise to meet you, or risk losing you altogether. When you pull back, you trigger the law of contrast, the undeniable human truth that we only appreciate something fully when we feel its absence. Think about it. When the sun shines every single day without pause, we forget its brilliance until a storm rolls in and we long for its warmth again. The same is true with people. When you're always present, always available, always pouring out your time and energy, your presence becomes the norm. It's expected, and expectations dull appreciation. But the moment you step away, the light changes. Suddenly, what was once taken for granted becomes impossible to ignore. This contrast is powerful because it awakens awareness. He begins to notice the quiet where your voice once was, the emptiness where your presence once filled the space. He notices how conversations feel different, how the rhythm of life feels disrupted without your energy. It's not that you're punishing him, it's that your absence creates a spotlight on everything you once brought to the table. Contrast sharpens the senses, and in that sharpening, he begins to realize the true depth of what he had. But here's the deeper truth. This isn't just about him. It's about you too. Contrast gives you clarity. It reminds you of the weight you were carrying, the ways you might have been overextending, and how powerful your presence truly is. Sometimes we don't even see our own value until we step back and notice the difference ourselves. That moment of pulling back allows you to say, I matter, my energy matters, my love, my time, my presence. They are not small things, they change everything. What makes contrast so transformative is that it creates urgency. Once someone realizes what they've lost, they're faced with a choice. Do they step up and chase what truly matters, or do they allow it to slip away? That urgency pulls them out of complacency. It pushes them to act, to communicate, to invest in a way they may not have done before. Because now they see that your presence isn't endless. It's a gift, and gifts can be lost if they're not cherished. And while he is wrestling with that realization, you're standing taller in your own strength. You're no longer waiting for him to wake up. You already know your worth. The beauty of contrast is that it doesn't just wake him up, it wakes you up too. It reminds you that your absence has power, your silence has weight, and your boundaries are not walls but lessons. And from that place of clarity, you no longer chase validation, you embody it. So when you pull back and contrast kicks in, the entire dynamic changes. He sees you differently, you see yourself differently. And in that shift, a new truth emerges. The one who was once passive now feels compelled to chase, not because you demanded it, but because your absence revealed the undeniable impact of your presence. When we bring all of this together, the truth becomes clear. Pulling back isn't weakness, it isn't avoidance, and it isn't a game. It's a declaration of self-worth. It's the moment you remind both yourself and others that your energy is not infinite and your presence is not a given. Every step you take back into your own power creates a ripple effect that cannot be ignored. What once seemed like ordinary consistency suddenly becomes extraordinary in its absence, and the person who didn't notice before begins to notice everything. The beauty of this process lies in how it recenters you. Instead of chasing approval, you choose to invest in yourself. You reclaim your time, your peace, your joy, and in doing so, you radiate a strength that naturally attracts respect. It's no longer about proving your worth to someone else. It's about living from it. That shift changes everything. It creates a magnetic pull, not because you're begging for attention, but because you've stopped giving it away freely without reciprocity. And yes, he begins to chase, but that's not the point. The real victory isn't in his pursuit, it's in your transformation. The fact that your absence wakes him up is simply proof of what was true all along. You are powerful, valuable, and irreplaceable. But the deeper gift is that pulling back allows you to see it for yourself. It gives you perspective, clarity, and the strength to decide whether someone deserves to be close to you, rather than waiting for them to decide. As you integrate this, remember that contrast is your ally. Silence, space, and distance are not empty. They are rich with meaning. They teach lessons that words cannot. They awaken appreciation where complacency once lived. And they remind both of you that presence is a gift, not a guarantee. When you step back, you don't lose power. You amplify it. You create the very space where respect, effort, and true connection can grow. So the conclusion is simple but powerful. When you pull back, you reset the balance. You reclaim your energy, you awaken his awareness, and you transform the entire dynamic of the relationship. But above all, you step into your own truth. And in that space of strength, you're no longer chasing. You're choosing yourself first and letting everything else rise to meet you. That is where your power lives, and that is where lasting respect and love are born. Thank you so much for being here with me today, for listening with an open heart, and for giving yourself the gift of reflection and growth. Every moment we've shared in this space has been about more than just words. It's been about reminding you of the incredible strength and value you already carry within you. Your willingness to show up for yourself is proof that you're ready to step into a higher level of awareness, power, and self-respect. I want you to leave here not only inspired but empowered. I want you to walk away knowing that your presence is a gift, your energy is precious, and your silence, your space, your boundaries, they are not weaknesses, they are strengths. They are tools that realign relationships, demand respect, and open doors for deeper connection, not through force, but through truth. So as I say goodbye for now, I want to thank you again for your time, your energy, and your focus. These moments matter because they remind you of who you truly are and what you're capable of. Carry this message with you into your daily life. Let it shape the way you show up, not just in relationships, but in the way you lead, love, and live. Remember, you don't need to chase what's meant for you. Your value speaks louder than any words, and when you pull back into your own power, the world will always adjust. The right people will rise to meet you because your worth cannot be overlooked. With gratitude and respect, I say goodbye for now. Stay strong, stay true, and always honor the power that lies within you. Until we meet again, keep choosing yourself first. You are worth it.